Welcome to the Ward's Way Podcast.
Welcome to the Ward's Way Podcast, where we share lessons learned from amazing industry leaders. And today I have the esteemed pleasure of having Mr. Jay Reynolds of JP Reynolds Freight Forwarding. Welcome.
JP Reynolds Company, yes.
JP Reynolds Company,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah,
See, it's a
that's
podcast.
good.
You could correct it. It's good. It's not Barbara Walters.
That's all right.
So, welcome to our first ever podcast. Have you ever done a podcast before?
No, first time.
Okay.
First time,
Me
but I
too.
appreciate the invitation.
Me too, and thank you for coming. Tell me what you do.
Sure.
I know what you do, but
I know. JP Reynolds Company is a family-owned business started back in 1970. My father started the business as a customs broker, which is a service that helps people that are importing goods into the United States deal with U.S. customs and the whole import process, which is pretty complicated. There's a lot of regulations that go with that. And he started that business with one or two clients and built it up and did a great job with that. He asked me to come on board to open up the export side of the business, which is called freight forwarding.
did you want to be in the business? Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
No, that's quite all right. I was in the business for a short period. I got laid off.
Your dad fired
because
you? Wow.
I was bad.
Wow, that's funny.
I had no interest in being there, and I went out into the rest of the world and found out it really wasn't that bad.
It really wasn't. It wasn't a bad gig. Let me come back. What did you do in that gap time? Come on.
I'm not getting into that. There's all kinds of stuff. But
season
anyway,
2.
I did come back. He asked me to come
Was it
back.
explicit? Okay. All right. He asked you to come back.
He asked me to come back and open up the export side of the business because he had import customers that were exporting stuff. And I did. And through just a lot of hard work and stuff, grew it to about 50% of the business. And then I transitioned into the import side of things to learn that side of the business. Got my broker's license and took over the management of the import side and got a manager for the export side. And then I took over the management of the company.
When was that?
1992.
Okay.
Yeah. And have been running it ever since. But I developed a couple of things in between. We had customs brokerage, freight forwarding, international logistics, where we work with agents in 182 different countries.
Wow.
And work on moving the goods from foreign to the U.S. for our customers. So it's a one phone call process. Now one email process. Mm-hmm. And we arrange everything from door to door, and vice versa. If you're exporting something, we arrange it from door to door, if asked. So it's again, through the years, it's been a very interesting process. I've shipped everything from diamonds to elephants and
Elephants?
Yeah, yep, elephants.
Where did you ship an elephant to or from, or
From
door
here,
to door?
From here to Colombia for a circus. I shipped a circus from here to Venezuela.
The whole circus?
The whole circus.
Wow.
Lion cubs and snakes and circus cars and all kinds of stuff. And I've had a lot of very interesting things. Marine industries. I got my chops, my interest in the marine industry, not just from my locale, being here in Fort Lauderdale. It's kind of hard not to, but I got involved just almost by accident with a sailing regatta, and ended up chartering a ship to haul these small sailboats from here down to the Caribbean for a race, and then bring them all back. That morphed into something called the Whitbread Around the World race, and I was the logistics person for the stops here in the U.S. for the Whitbread Around the World race, and then 2 Volvo races.
We have a Whitbread poster in our offices.
Yeah.
across
And if
the
you don't
street.
know what Whitbread Round the World Race was, it was a group of about 15 sailboats that started in England and went basically around the world. But with stops in different countries for about a week or two, depending on the circumstance. And in that, with their stops, they would bring a whole race village with them, containers of goods, containers of their supplies, containers to fix their boats.
And that
all
was
kinds of
unheard of
things.
at the time. That was
Oh, very much so. Yeah, it was just
so. This
pretty
was kind of
innovative.
innovative
Yeah.
and new to do.
So they were hopscotching containers. So some containers would be in England. We couldn't get them fast enough down to Spain
Wow.
or whatever the next stop was, or Africa, wherever the next stop was. So they had to have two sets of
So you
containers
could
jumping
get
from
them
one
there.
place to the other. Yeah.
Logistics. Wow.
And it
Did you
was-
keep track of all of that and how you did it?
Oh,
Because
sure.
I'm sure that was paperwork versus computers.
At the time, it was nothing but paperwork. Yeah, yeah.
So you probably have some thick files on that.
I
That would
did.
be interesting.
It was very fascinating. It was very challenging.
That's how you explain your
but
business,
great,
though.
Great stuff, yeah.
Because
it
had you
involved
not gone
import,
through it,
export,
yeah.
it did everything. Air freight. We had to charter. Well, actually, we were involved with a charter of a gigantic aircraft called the Azimuth that put two New Zealand sailboat racing hulls, 85-foot long sailing
Wow.
sailboats, into the plane, and then flew them up here for training. Yeah.
Do you do anything similar now? Is there anybody out there doing anything similarly logistic wise?
I'm not sure what the status is of Volvo now. It got taken over by DHL. I think, some of the gigantic ones took it
Yeah.
over for the name recognition. They were basically doing the work for free because they put their name on
Sure.
everything. So, yeah, that kind of took us out of that particular picture. But
I was
we
gonna
still
say
we still come up with, some interesting projects.
Well, the America's Cup this year is going to end in Barcelona. Are you
Involved with that? Not at this time.
Because I'm sure they have, like you said, kind of
Corporate
a
sponsors.
corporate.
Yeah. Yep.
I never knew you shipped elephants.
I did. Yeah. And I have a great story for that.
Well, we're still on. Okay, what's the story?
Okay.
We're going to have to mesh this together.
Yeah, however you want. Friday afternoon, this is going back many years. Friday afternoon, I get a phone call from a shipping company that goes into Port Everglades from the Bahamas.
Okay.
And they called me up and they said, Jay, we got this big problem. Can you help us? Can you help us? And it's like 3:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. And I'm like, big problem on a Friday afternoon. Okay, sure. We have an elephant that we brought over from the Bahamas, and customs won't release it and agriculture won't release it. And we don't know what to do. And I said, okay, well, are the owners there? Yes, the owners are there. So send them over. Let me see what paperwork they have. Let me see, what's the circumstances, because the shipping company didn't really understand what the problems were. And this little old couple comes in, and
Into your office?
yeah, and they were a postcard picture of Mr. and Mrs. Claus.
Oh.
The guy was probably 5'8", 5'9", round face, little round belly, wearing overalls, and she's got the curly with the glasses and the
my
whole
goodness,
thing. And
yeah.
I mean, they were just the sweetest people in the world, and the owners and trainers of this elephant. So we got to talking and stuff, and it turns out the big problem was, it wasn't customs, it was the elephant was supposed to get a tick bath before it left the Bahamas, and it didn't.
So they're worried about Bahamian ticks?
They're worried about ticks, and USDA and Fish and Wildlife had issues with that, and no, they weren't going to release the elephant off the dock until off the ship until the elephant, was cleared. And they said, okay, well, you have to take the elephant back on the ship. We're not releasing it off the ship. And the shipping company saying, well, we don't want to take the elephant back to the Bahamas, but we have to leave. We have to go because we have a schedule to keep. And so after a lot of phone calls and prodding and stuff, I finally got a hold of the Fish and Wildlife officer that was in charge of this. It was
Now we're in Friday night.
miracle. Friday, yeah, it was like 6 o'clock. I finally got a hold of this person, and the guy says, "Look, I'm sorry, that's what the regulations. They should have done that." And I said, "Wait, let me just ask you a question. Fish and wildlife is supposed to be for the protection of fish and wildlife, correct? And the elephant is wildlife. And you're suggesting that the right answer here is to put this elephant back on a ship to cross over to the Bahamas again, to get a bath and come back. That's the way the elephant should be treated?" And the guy's, "Well, no, yeah, I can see where the dilemma is, but the problem is we don't have any vets that can take care of certifying this and doing the tick bath." And I said, there's got to be a vet. So we found one in Orlando, and she drove down, and they did the tick bath and certified it, and we got the elephant off. And this little couple, again, sitting in my office, it's now like 10 o'clock. They're just tears.
Aww.
Tears because their Daisy the elephant got released and they could take her home up to Sarasota where she belongs.
Well, I would say that from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock in 6 hours, you managed to get in touch with Fish and Wildlife. You managed to get in touch with the client. You managed to find a veterinarian to get a tick bath. Boy, this is a plug for JP Reynolds and Company. Man, if you need some miracles, I mean...
Don't call me with elephants.
Please, call them at Friday, 4 o'clock. It seems like
please.
That's your crunch time when you can get it done.
WhatsApp me.
I mean, it can't be as bad as an elephant tick bath.
It was.
That has to be like your.
I'm just so happy that it worked out. It was.
Did you stay in touch with them for a period of time after that?
I got invited to
Daisy's debut.
Go up there if I was ever up in that area, but no, not really. That was.
Wow, that's a great story.
Thank you. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
It was.
That's definitely going above and beyond.
Yeah.
But that's Jay Reynolds.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So you asked me my reason for inviting you. One, I respect you as an industry leader and a business leader. You're also a second generation of your family business, so we have that in common. But we really should probably confess our coup in the marine industry, that both of us became leaders without being elected. So this is our moment. The 20 years has gone by, I think.
Yes.
Almost. So statute of limitation.
Okay now. Yeah. I was actually never elected to any position at the Marine Industries Association.
Me neither.
I just got appointed and appointed and appointed and transitioned.
Now, how did you get onto the board? The Marine Industries, we're talking about the Marine Industries Association of South Florida, who is one of the largest local trade associations in the country and the owner of the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, for those that don't know. So
yes.
When did you get on the board? Oh, I'm doing a timeline. Sorry.
That's okay. I actually don't know what the actual year was.
Okay.
I was invited by Frank Herhold, who was then executive director, to fill the seat that was going vacant on the board.
So you were appointed.
And yes, I was appointed. And he knew me from the Port Everglades Association.
Yep.
I was an officer on that board. And he knew that I was involved in the marine industries kind of on a periphery level, not like a marina or like, your company, very involved in the marine. Being a freight forwarder and a customs broker, my role was more assisting people importing and exporting goods.
Right.
Which
is important in the yachting industry. There's a lot of that going on.
Well, it certainly has grown to be a really incredible industry. No question about it. It's been fantastic.
So sorry, I interrupted you. We're going to go back to that.
That's okay. So
Frank Herhold invited you.
Yeah, Frank Herhold invited me for a 1-year term, and then after that, I filled somebody else's position after that. I just kept...
Come on, it's confession. This is it.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I just kept going. I actually did formally, I guess, get elected to the presidency.
Yes.
Part of the requirement.
Well, the board has to approve the executive committee. So the board did approve for you to be the president.
Yes. But again, it wasn't a general election It was a board appointment pretty much. So, hey, whatever got me through it.
You know what? I'm the same way.
I put about 20 years in.
You're my reason for being on the board. I think I started off on the website committee, which is kind of funny for anybody that knows me. Like, I know this much about the website, but I was so eager to be on a committee at the Marine Industries. Back then, there were probably 15, 16 standing committees that, it was your way of getting involved and becoming a part. And I will put you on the spot on this one because I don't recall. Was it legislative? Like because you recruited me, which I was very honored, and I appreciate that. But why did you, I don't remember why.
Why did I recruit you?
Yeah.
There were a couple of reasons. One, yes,
I know it's my podcast, but you don't have to be nice.
No, I'm being serious. When you look around at a board, and the boards have always had really strong people on them. Mm-hmm. Some stronger than others, but
I agree with you.
You look for talent as it shows up, and yes, you were involved in the website committee, but then you really started getting vocal during the board meetings regarding legislative. Mm-hmm. And yes, I mean it was relative to your company, but all the businesses are there for that purpose, and the marine industry. To grow the marine industry, to protect it.
Right.
And you were obviously very intelligent and very well spoken.
Nice,
yeah, well, I'm not. I know.
I appreciate it.
I'm not flattering you here for no reason. The reality is that, you were young.
Yes, that I'll definitely give you. I think I want to say I think I was 29 when I first got on the board.
Really?
Yep.
You were that old?
Look how nice. That's how you do it. That is how you do it, in case anybody's curious out there. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. So I had energy, and I was so excited, so nervous. But I remember, and it's funny, I tell this woman all the time, somebody that's in the industry, she, we would go to these board dinners. So after I get brought on by you and I'm nervous, I mean, I'm just like, oh my gosh, and the people at the table are, just people that I look up to and are these big business owners. And I definitely felt like, what am I doing here? And I remember the best piece of advice I gave, she said, don't talk for the first year, just listen. You don't know enough to bring anything to the table anyway. So you might as well just be quiet. And at the time I was like, imagine me, especially since you know me, how hard that pill was to swallow. And I was like, whoa. And then, you know what? It was the best piece of advice. And I have to say, I've shared that advice too, that just listen. You don't have to have the answers.
Yeah.
And then, it was shortly thereafter, that we had a lot thrown on our plate.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, you made some changes to the association that were when you became president. That were kind of startling for the association itself. We stopped the.
Oh, really? What was that? I don't recall.
Well,
Tell me now.
The big one was no more of the planning sessions, going away for the planning sessions, and that was. I wasn't necessarily in favor of that, but the reality was it was monetarily, as the association was running out of money, it was the right call to make. But for a bonding experience for the rest of the group.
I agree with you 100%. So we used to have these board retreats for listeners. We had these board retreats, and they were, especially when they had like a moderator, and we would go to places where we're not sitting near our offices, our staff can't get us. God, I feel like even our phones were not, it's certainly at these levels anymore. No. I think they were, God, I think back then I didn't even text because you had to kind of 111, 222, 33, I never figured that out. So it was a way for us to get away and really look at the future of what the association stood for, what did the industry need. And I would agree with you, it was a good camaraderie, but I do think at the time we were kind of shy on budget, and it was one of those.
Oh yeah, it was a good cut. It was a hard cut.
But it did change things. Yeah.
Yeah. However, I'm very, as I said many times, bringing you on was of the few really great decisions I made.
Oh, Jack.
That was
well, and then I have to say I got to return the favor because if you recall, unfortunately, so we went through all of that, and we won't even get into, a later guest on this podcast is Andrew with Informa. Back then it was show management, but I remember we were together as an executive committee when we had to choose to have the show during Wilma.
Yes.
And I remember not having power, and us all getting together and meeting with Kay Pearson, God rest his soul, at the time to figure out what was going to happen. And I don't think a lot of people know that whole story. So this hurricane's coming, and the boat show, many people probably don't know that the boat show takes how long to set up? It's like they occupy it for a month. Yeah. And I would say 2/3 of it is setting it up, and 1/3 of it is breaking it down, and then you actually have the show for the 5 days. But so setup had already started, tents were already erected, temporary docks I think were already in place. This was 8 days before the show was going to open.
Yeah.
And anybody that's fact checking, forgive me, could have been 9 days, could have been close. We're not doing timelines. I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have to be exact. Approximately. Less than 2 weeks. And here comes this hurricane that's really not going to come from our side. It's going to come from the west side. And the decision was, do we take down the show? Do we ride with it? What do we do? And the boats had to leave. Obviously they have a hurricane plan. And then all these tents are up, and we have to mitigate damage. And then Wilma came and was a lot more than what we thought it was going to be. And there were a lot of people without power, and there were a lot of businesses struggling, but we still decided to keep the show.
Oh, that and A1A was covered in sand.
Yep.
All the way into the into the show. And,
yep.
I particularly recall again your leadership. I thought was spectacular on that, because you were able very shortly after the show, and actually probably prior to the show, you had the Coast Guard, you had the city, you had the sheriffs, you had Kay Pearson and the show management folks there, and all coming to grips of, hey, this is going to happen. And then especially after it, how do we get the show back up and running?
Yeah.
In days.
Well, and I wish I had like this foresight and I was this tremendous leader, but I think it was just about, Kay Pearson. I don't know, for those that knew him, probably, you either loved him or not. But I thought this is where he shined, because nobody knew how to run a boat show better than Kay. Mm-hmm. And then he relied on his friends. I mean, it was Ron Bergeron who said, sure, Kay, I'll help you at no cost to the city, at no cost to the residents of the city. And also he called in his friends at Waste Management.
Yep.
He called in, and it was really a community effort that said, we got to get this cleaned up and we got to keep a boat show going. And I know for us as an industry, it was, these are a lot of small businesses that are going to depend on this. If all of a sudden we cancel it, what does that mean to a lot of people? And we did take some heat for that, though.
We absolutely did, from a lot of the exhibitors and from some of the city. And I mean, yes, you did. But the decision was the absolute correct one, because if you let the show go,
yep,
trying to get all that back and that whole momentum back again, for the following years would have been very difficult. And the impact that the show has on the city of Fort Lauderdale, peripheral of the marine industries, hotels, restaurants, cabs, airport, whatever it was, is fantastic. I mean, $300 million or something like that, more than a Super Bowl.
At zero cost to the city, by the way, remember.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
The city never has to pay for the extra police or for anything to help accommodate the boat show. And so that's something that's really important. And I know at the time Mayor Noggle was very supportive, or was that Jack? I think it was Mayor Noggle at the time. It was still Jim. Mm-hmm. But I do think, though, that was an important time. And I remember looking to you like, well, should we really? And we all sat down and said, you know what, we're committed together to do this. We have to do it. And then the gang got back together again, 7 years-ish don't quote, no timelines, later because the association was having a hard time. And that's when I was like, oh, Jay, come back to the team. No. So we really had a chance to, in both of the times that we were in leadership, we did it together. And I found you to be you were always very logical. And I've never known you to be any different after all these years. I feel like you do that with your business. You do that with your family. You do that with all decisions that you make. So I think that makes you a tremendous leader.
Thank you. Well, it goes back to that same thing that you were talking about of don't open your mouth unless you have something to say. That's meaningful and impactful. Too many times people just talk to hear themselves talk. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to move up into the presidency of the association was I would sit and listen to the arguments and then ask one or two questions and hopefully boil it down to what I thought was the movement for the association. So I think you're the one that appointed me to the boat show committee chair. And that was at the time, as you said, that the association and Bahia Mar and the city were all in a conflict of how to move forward, keep the boat show, develop the property, keep the city involved, the three-legged stool. And
explain that more because, for us, I'm nodding and I'm going, I totally know what you're talking about. Been there, lived it, brings it all back. But I'm not sure that a lot of people understand that the world's largest boat show is located here, that the city does not ever have to pay anything, whether it's infrastructure, again, support systems, garbage, police, whatever, and the economic impact that it brings in. And but people don't realize that Bahia Mar, kind of where the center of the show is a city-owned property leased by people that own the hotel, the marina, and then so you have the show. You have the show producers, you have the industry, and then you have the facilities. And at the time, I believe the boat show was on 7 locations: the Convention Center, Pier 66, the Marriott, Hall of Fame, Las Olas, Bahia Mar. Yeah. So, I mean, there were a lot of moving pieces. So when we say things like you're chair of the boat show committee, this isn't like, okay, so what's the color scheme this year or who's doing the tickets? It's like, this is a huge 5-day Super Bowl every year that we don't have to bid on that's going to come. And, 1,200 boats on display and something along that, the same thing for, on land, but these are all businesses, and some of these businesses it's 60% of their year is just to make this, and so it was important for the industry, and I'm glad that we got to help make that decision. I always say you're the village idiot or you're the hero. Yeah. So it looks like 20 years later we're like heroes. It's good. We did okay.
We did good.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Well, we don't think we're the village idiots, but maybe you never know.
There were times.
History, I know. Well, we'll leave those aside. So one other thing I wanted to bring up, talk to me about foreign trade zone. So is that what we call it, foreign trade zones or free trade zones? I know there's
I kind of nicknamed it Marine Free Trade Zone.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about that? What is a Marine
Free Trade Zone?
Free Trade Zone.
Okay. It is basically an allowance by the U.S. Customs for a certain area to be treated as a free trade zone so that goods can go into that free trade zone without first having to pay duty. And it can be manufactured, the goods can be offered for sale. And
this is normal practice at a port.
This is normal practice this has been normal practice for hard goods. If you were going to manufacture a television, you would import the case from Indonesia. You'd import the plastic buttons from Taiwan, the tube from Germany, and you would have all different variations of duty rates for those parts. If it's manufactured in the foreign trade zone, it comes out as a television with a duty rate of 1%, where those all together may have had a duty rate of 15 or 20%. So that was kind of the sell point to the industry of you wanted to bring merchandise in, have it manufactured, and come out at a specific duty rate. It was also a way for goods to go into this free zone for cigarettes and liquor and other things that the cruise industry uses quite a lot.
Okay.
A lot of restrictions on cigarettes, a lot of restrictions and duties and fees on liquor. So put it in the foreign trade zone, transfer it, bonded directly to the cruise ship. You don't pay any of that.
Okay.
So very handy tool. Several years ago, the Free Trade Zone Board up in D.C. is a federal board of the Department of Commerce. They made a change in their ruling where it didn't have to be a brick and mortar facility. It didn't have to be a warehouse, which is what it traditionally was. And you could have subzones kind of parked all over wherever you wanted. So the city of Fort Lauderdale, the Marine Industries Association, myself, and a foreign trade zone consultant got together and talked about how this might work with the marine industry, and met with U.S. Customs. I developed a plan that I thought was going to work for them because I understood yachts. I understood some of the foreign trade zone aspects of it. And the foreign trade zone consultant kind of brought his knowledge of how to create them. It has, in my opinion, been very impactful for this industry.
So how does it work here?
Well, you can have a $10 million or $100 million yacht show up and be put into a marine free trade zone without first having to pay duty.
So I've seen that like at certain facilities that are part of this free trade zone, they have FTZ
Correct.
dock slips.
That's
so
correct.
boat comes into that slip.
Yes. And it can be offered for sale to anybody at any time as long as it's in that foreign trade zone inventory.
U.S. citizens too?
Anybody.
Okay.
Normally, if a yacht like that comes in without going into a foreign trade zone,
Let's say it comes in at the show.
If it comes into the show, Customs would require it to pay duties prior to offering itself for sale. And that's really the big distinction here is you have to pay the duty before you have a sale.
Okay.
And I know that the industry kind of fought back a little bit with Customs about that. They said, hey, well, why can't we get the sale first and then pay the duties? And Customs said, well, we don't trust you. The law says
That's not how it works.
Yeah,
right.
it doesn't work for refrigerators or cars or anything else.
Sure.
It's not going to work for the yachting industry. So, so this became a terrific tool because in the past we used to have yachts come in, a $10 million yacht. They would have to pay the duty, so that's $150,000, I guess it was. Pay the duties up front. If they didn't sell, then they would go foreign and try and reclaim that duty back. And at the time, Customs was taking 3 to 5 years to refund the duties, if they refunded the duties.
Which doesn't seem like a big incentive to sell your yacht here.
The yacht would come back a year later and have to do it again because you've already made that claim to get your duty back. So they said, okay, well, you're back again, pay the $150,000 again.
Right.
And so that just really wasn't working.
And is that why we used to see the signs at the boat show that said, not for sale in U.S. waters to U.S. citizens is because it hadn't paid that duty?
Correct.
So therefore it could be at the boat show. It was under a bond.
Temporary
import. And so it could be shown, but that's why you would see all those signs, which I always, for years, I wondered, obviously I learned what it meant, but I don't think a lot of people understood that. So once we had the foreign trade zone, now these boats are able to come in. They can be for sale to anyone.
Yes.
In U.S. waters to U.S. citizens.
Correct.
And then before it leaves the zone, it has to pay the duty.
No, actually what happens is in order to consummate the sale, the yacht has to go foreign.
Does this make this an explicit
Yes,
episode? Could be. Yeah. All right. We said
Okay, we have to
consummate.
cut that
Oh,
one
wow.
out.
All right. No, it's good.
Before the deal is consummated, the yacht has to go foreign.
Okay.
They can close in the Bahamas due
Sure.
to closing. Or if it's a U.S. buyer, you can pay the duty on the boat and then remove it from the zone.
Okay.
So those are pretty much the two
But now some land-based companies, including ourselves, we applied to be part of the foreign trade zone. We didn't have the manufacturing side of it, but there were some land-based companies that also decided to be a part of this marine free trade zone. And how
Yes.
did that work? So they could export to that foreign trade zone.
Yeah. A fantastic example of this is when the Trump administration put the 25% tariff on Chinese goods. Mm-hmm. You now had small companies that were importing quite a bit of Chinese goods, and their tariff rates went from 5% to now 30% of value.
Wow.
So in order to avoid that, they would put the goods into the foreign trade zone and not pay any of the duties, and either sell export or manufacture it into something else, incorporate it into something else that would not have that kind of duty rate. And there's a lot of laws and regulations that are involved in how you can do that, but
So is the marine free trade zone a forever thing? Does it have to be renewed? Is it something we have to keep protecting or make sure that doesn't go away? Or
no, I don't see at this juncture. I don't see it being a controversial issue. We have done 8 now
okay,
around the country, and have 2 more that are in process. And everybody seems very happy about it. Especially the local economics,
Sure.
The city of Fort Lauderdale or the city, whatever city it's going into, they can see the economic benefit of bringing in these 200-foot yachts that are going to do provisioning at $500,000
Sure.
to provision without doing any repairs, without doing anything. That's what the kind of money that they're spending. And then the crew housing, restaurants, bars.
Absolutely.
I was talking to somebody that's applying for one right now, and they said that an owner of a 220-foot yacht brought his boat in, liked the marina, liked the area, bought his condo so that he could come down and so he's spending money in the area.
Buying real estate just
buy real estate just
Yep.
to be there, and then, had bought crew housing for his crew, and, when they're there. So it's impactful. So the cities, particularly the economic development councils and stuff, are very, very friendly to this.
Good.
Very friendly. And Customs so far has been terrific.
And you still work with them closely on
very
this?
much.
Good.
Very much, yeah.
Good.
It's, it was a lot of tough concepts for them to work around because they're used to brick and mortar.
Right.
They're used to doing audits and walking in and saying, okay, we're now going to count the, 300 bottles of Pierre Cardin cologne.
Sure.
And the 20 pallets of cigarettes and this and that. And, and they can walk in and they can see it. We had to get them around that brick and mortar aspect of it and go, this is a yacht, and yachts can move. And there's some inherent issues with it, but Customs was very, very
Good.
friendly, but they have to follow regulations and they have to monitor it, and it's
Yeah.
been a very, very good relationship.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you see anything in the future that might put it in jeopardy? Do we see young, it wouldn't be the newly entered agents coming into Customs that would be making those decisions, but do you see any reason anybody politically would want to see this go away? At times that's okay. It's just water.
It's the sweat stains.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. No, I really don't.
Good.
This is on a much higher level. Yes, every port has their differences about
Right.
what they want and don't want, and how liberal or conservative they're going to be, how close to the regulations they're going to follow. But again, so far
Good.
they've been very reasonable about, this is an odd commodity. These aren't refrigerators. Refrigerators don't sail away or don't have that capability. Refrigerators don't have crew living on them and working on them and stuff like that. Don't go through normal maintenance like that. So there's a lot of things that customs sat down and listened and understood about this commodity and have been very reasonable about it. And the Foreign Trade Zone Board and the Foreign Trade Zone grantees that are all involved in this process. So I don't see any one particular officer or group of officers coming in and going, no, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work.
Have you noticed in your own business changes in freight forwarding, places people are going, things they're sending back and forth?
Through 50 years now.
Are we going to the timelines?
54 years. 54 years now.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we've seen some changes here and there. Most of the changes for me is we're a small company. So we have to be, as you are.
Yes.
You have to be nimble. You have to look at the market. You have to try and position yourself, look at opportunities as they show up. Some opportunities were good. Some opportunities weren't. Some came, some went, some stayed with us. The biggest challenge for us and benefit has been technology. It was a huge expense many years ago when Customs said, hey, we're not doing paper anymore. You have to invest literally, tens of thousands of dollars to be on this system. And it was...
That's a lot to put on a small business, just kind of matter of factly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. So, and everybody had to do it. So, it was a big expenditure for us. But as times have changed, it was a question of productivity based on that technology that is really paying off. Good. It was not it was not friendly back then. We had green bar reports spitting out of these machines that you had to read these reports and Customs questioning the documentation and all this. Now it's all electronic transmission. Documents are transmitted electronically. I had 3 staff just working on the reports that this thing was spitting out to monitor them and make sure that we were getting the information correctly to Customs. That's disappeared. It used to be we had to drive to Customs and many years ago open up the crates for them to look in the box, and sign off on paper and type it all up on a typewriter. I got to laugh off very quickly. I have a 22-year-old employee with me, and he came in the first day and he saw the typewriter sitting on the stand there, and he goes, "What the heck is that?"
Isn't that funny?
What is that? I go, "Well, it's like a keyboard, but a little different." So I let him play with it for a little while.
Gosh, I'm old enough to remember typing class in school, and
I don't want to talk about going from mail to fax to.
But wasn't life a little bit simpler back then? It's interesting because good segue. We talk about that. By the way, this was my first office here at Ward's Marine Electric in this particular. Right here, this square. There used to be a wall there, and my dad and grandfather were over there. But I can remember the fax machines with the thermographic paper.
Oh, yeah.
That they would curl up and fall on the floor underneath the fax machine. But that was like your morning, what happened overnight? Yeah. And maybe hit the button on the voice recorder. Now, my goodness, I must get 50 emails overnight and messages from the bank and messages from this and that. It's like, how did we ever do business during normal hours? And we did it to ourselves.
If you think about the fact that just everything had to be mailed.
Right.
And you would mail something to a client, and then the client would mail it back to you, and then you'd mail an invoice to them, and they would mail you a check back. And
we still have some of that, but it is very like,
looking back now, very dark ages. So it's, there are positives and negatives to this. I'm old school. I'm used to the telephone ringing.
Yeah.
I grew up with that. If the telephone wasn't ringing, then we were not doing well in business.
Sure.
Things were a problem.
Right.
Right. So it took me many years to get out of that. And I still am very uncomfortable walking into the office.
And if you don't hear the
at
phone
10
ringing,
o'clock and it's quiet. I can hear
I'm the
people
same way.
tapping and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. But that's, it's a different world.
Going back to our times on the board, even now, like I think about how many Zoom meetings are you in, or how many different, I know COVID threw us into that, but I remember sitting at the board, we would get these packets and they would be delivered, by a human to us. And then we were asked to read these packets, especially under your reign and mine as well. You better read your packets and show up to the board ready. I'm not doing the review session or like, let's read while we get here. But it's funny, like those expectations aren't there now. I sit on other committees or in different associations at times, and I don't see all of that. I think there's a part of us that needs to go back to some of the old school. You need to be prepared when you go to a meeting, not on Zoom. If I see Zoom, I just know I can sorry, I'm going to admit to everybody out there, but if I'm on a Zoom meeting and you can turn off your camera, somebody's doing something else. You're answering emails. You're trying to put out a fire someplace else, and like we're just too distracted. Back in the day when we didn't have these smartphones and your phone just kind of sat over there and we talked for 2 to 3 hours. I think we should bring some of that back.
Well, without getting into the kind of the politics of things, I think it's very interesting that the school system is doing this, taking the cell phones out of the school. And you know how many parents I think are against it? And I'm just like, absolutely not. I absolutely agree with it.
I know where you are. If I need you, I'll come get you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You don't need to call me.
We'll get your phone, but you don't need it in class.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
So, I have an employee that does a lot of her work on WhatsApp, and she's talking to them over the weekend.
Oh yeah.
Because it just doesn't stop.
I agree.
And I don't agree with that. I think people need their weekends. I think people need their vacations. They need to, I appreciate the hard work, but you have to have the chill time.
I agree. I try personally as the CEO. I'm never going to say never, but I try to never send an email out past 4 or 5 o'clock. You don't need to be thinking about me in the evening unless it's about weather or, there's flooding in downtown Fort Lauderdale. That never happens, but, or there's a tropical storm or something. But then I even created an essentials team so that these are people that signed up in my staff that said, we'll be on your emergency call list. And like, if there is a storm or we are going to come in, we have an essentials team that can handle it. And then they will see if it's okay to have other people come, but just to make sure, because there's such a fine line between not running your business and then putting anybody in danger. And so, but I agree with you to go back to kind of some principles. I don't think you should send emails. I don't make everybody on call over the weekend. I don't want people to worry about it in the evening. You need to have your family time because when you are at work, I need 120%.
Yeah.
Not even just 100. I need a lot. So you need your time off. Yeah.
Well, it's really kind of an interesting situation, and that we're talking about the intensity of this business in the marine industries and everything, and the marine industries is all about relaxation. With your family, getting on the boat.
Agree. Yeah. No, I agree. Rejuvenation.
We're grinding it out. So,
But isn't that, it's probably the same way in the yoga industry. The people that make those mats are probably like, hope you sweat, we're over here killing ourselves or the people, but it's true. We don't follow some of the lessons that are right in front of us.
Yeah.
But well, I have to say that I learned many lessons from you. Definitely your leadership and also not over talking, but always being level-headed. I don't think in all the years I've known you, which again, we won't go into timelines, but it's more than a couple decades, that I don't think I've ever seen you lose your cool. I don't think I've ever seen you speak out of turn or say something not nice to even when we should have at meetings where both of us have been brutalized, that I never saw you. So I appreciate that and appreciate your leadership and all that you've done. And
well, thank you. I'm going to thank my father for that.
Yeah. Me too, by the way.
When I first started in the business, I sat across the desk from my father for years. and I would have a client,
Poking at you.
our attorney send me a letter, and of course, in my opinion, the attorney didn't know really what he was talking about. He didn't understand customs rules and regulations, and I would sit there and whack out this really just blistering, "You're the biggest idiot ever," and how do you? And he goes, "Okay, now that you've typed that up, I want you
Feel
to
better?
crumple it up, throw it away."
Yeah.
Take a little walk, come
Right.
back, and now let's type
Well,
it up
that's
the way
very
it
good
should be.
advice. It's true.
And it was fantastic advice, and I've done my best to impart that to the people I work with.
You have 3 sons, and
yeah.
and are they the same?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, they're young still, but I think they're pretty level-headed. It's one of the things that like you said, I don't. If I'm upset, I'll whistle, and that's
Really? Oh, that's your telltale.
It is
Whistling.
It is my.
I don't think I've ever heard you whistle.
If I
Uh-oh.
if I walk through the house and I'm whistling,
That's
my
it?
wife will go, "Okay, come here, doggy, let's go outside."
Oh, I wish I had known that. Did you have a whistle at any kind of board meetings? I should have paid attention.
I do recall.
You whistled
I
a few.
do
You know
recall.
what? That's pretty funny. It took me all this time
Walking
to
away
learn that.
walking out of a Blackstone meeting whistling. Yes,
I know.
do
See,
recall.
we can say that. Like I said, there were meetings where any of us would have had the right to just defend ourselves, let alone. But I never saw you ever outside. I never even saw you whistle. So I'm gonna give you credit on that. Thank you for getting me into the marine industry. I appreciate it because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from the association, and
it's one of the things that I've always told anybody when I talk about my experience with the Marine Industries Association was that it was a great gift to me. And that's why I put almost 20 years into it. Thursday meetings and all the stuff that went along with it, committee meetings and stuff. And I've met some fantastic people, just wonderful, wonderful people. And they, there was an old adage about surround yourself with people smarter than you. And I did that. I mean, I know that the people that I had in many cases were smarter than I would ever be. And you just got different perspectives of business and different perspectives of, the life business balance and all kinds of things that came out of that was just fantastic. And you were certainly one of them. There's no question about it.
my kids have the favorite memories of our meetings at Lester's before we moved on from Lester's, but our weekly meetings at Lester's, and you talk about work-life balance. I drug my kids, as you well know, with me everywhere. And when it was the summers and we had our meetings, they would sit at that other table and order, chocolate chip pancakes and chocolate milk. And then I wondered why they were running all over, but we got our work done. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you've done over these years. And thank you for being a part of the season 1 of Ward's Way podcast.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite. And
you got it.
It's been a pleasure.